Our next speaker is coming from two different worlds, let's say. First of all, from the perspective of animal science, he's an educated animal scientist, geneticist, did his PhD in habilitation at the University in Kiel in Germany, and then later decided to leave the world of the university, but he's still teaching there, if I'm right. So he is still in contact with the university, with science, with students. But he decided to move into the industry, into the poultry industry, which I think is extremely interesting for us because it's a very global industry. So now he is developing and was responsible for 20 years as a managing director and a chief geneticist to develop the product, but also to sell the product on a global level. Since 2016, he is, let me say the title, is the Chief Technical Officer, is this true, of the Eaap group, still dealing with layers and animals. And as I know him since many years, Rudolf Preisinger, very open for any type of discussions around animal welfare, very open-minded, but also very straightforward. And therefore, I look very much to your presentation. Please come up to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Matthias and Andrea, thank you for the invitation. And as Matthias mentioned already, I would like to talk a little bit about the poultry industry. And when I look around, the majority of the people are dealing with ruminants and pigs. And we in the poultry industry might have a slightly different view. And I try to explain you a little bit what's our opinion for the near future, and I will focus on layers only, but later on maybe we can also discuss about broilers and other meat stock. There is no doubt, talking about heat waves and droughts, feed price will stay high. This is the major concern of any egg producer and poultry producer. Animal welfare is not just gaining, it's really important. Also for the United States, they never thought about it. And we have to select hens laying an egg with a strong shell because the consumer is opening the pack. You have 10 eggs or a dozen of eggs in front of you. Is one broken? You refuse. So the challenge is every egg has to be packed in a perfect way for the entire lifetime of a hen. And that's really the challenge we have to take into account, because by the end of the day, the consumer is taking the decision related to welfare and product quality. And in Asia and in Africa, it's product quality, and in the Northern Hemisphere, they talk the whole day about animal welfare with limited knowledge what's behind. In Europe, chickens have to have better bones. They are more or less all released from the cages. They fly around. And I'm always making a joke when the Dutch going to Bavaria or Switzerland for skiing, Jan, they break the bones. So they don't have brittle bones. It's the limit of exercise. But I cannot help my chickens, though they have to have stronger bones. We have already a ban on mutilation, on beak treatment, so no more tail clipping, like in pigs. Culling day-old male chicks, I skipped it from the agenda today, but we can talk about this. And less protein from overseas. In eggs, soya, or in chicken feeding, soya is a very bad ingredient. And especially if it is genetically modified. There is no way to educate the consumer. That's my perception. Soya is very bad, and very soon in Europe we have to feed all our chickens soya-free, which is a real challenge for the nutritionist. But by the end of the day, we can be proud what we have achieved over the past. We have been focusing on improving feed efficiency. And we all together in the breeding society can show that we have improved feed efficiency. So we need less kilogram feed per kilogram egg mass. And let's say within 25 years, we have it reduced by half a kilo. And if we convert this to saving in land, we can identify that we save a huge amount of hectares of wheat, what we have achieved by breeding tools. And this is really important, a saving of 8 million hectares in 20 years. And I think we have to go on listening to the forecast, what will happen on the climate level. We have to go on selecting for this because maybe the yielding in our fields will go down if we are facing more droughts, and you name it. On the other hand, especially the layer industry was banned due to the cage system. It was a bad, or it might be a bad environment. Originally, we put all the chickens into cages to move away from the manure, to reduce the contamination with bacteria like Salmonella. But this is gone. In Europe, since 2012, we have a ban on conventional cages. And we had to respond. It's not just the legislation, it's the consumer. And I took the example in the US, within the next 5 or 7 years, they have to convert around about 100 or 200 million cages into a cage-free environment. This will be a big investment, and it's mainly driven by the retailers. It's not the consumer, it's the retailer. The retailer wants to differentiate himself from the competitor. I want to support the more welfare-friendly system, but on the other hand, you need about 20 to 30% more feed to produce 1 kilogram of egg mass, 1 kilogram of human food. You have to give more space, they will eat more, they will die more, and you will have more downgraded eggs. So even mortality, which is for me a clear indicator for welfare, will go up. And I had several discussions with the retailers, and I told them, you are guilty for doubling the rate of mortality. As an average, if you keep chickens in cages, you have 3 to 4% mortality in 1 year of production. If you release them from cages, you have double the mortality. Taking the example of Germany, 40 million layers. If you have 5% mortality, 2 million die. If you have 10% mortality, 4 million will die. So in other words, you can say the retailer is guilty for 2 million more dead birds. But they don't care. They say, okay, it's my job to get it fixed. We have to produce what the consumer is asking for. And here's a small diagram, what is the trend in Europe. So in the German-speaking society and in Northern Europe, we have more cage-free environment, but everybody had in the meantime converted his old cages into enriched cages where you have a perch, a sandbox, and a nest box. Now let's talk a little bit about genetics. We have to select for a balanced performance profile, and I would like to say it's a dynamic process. So everybody who is involved in genetics know the magic word, you need an index. You try to combine, I would not say as many traits as possible, because if you do so, you will make less progress in each single trait. So it's our job to determine selection priorities. Maybe in the past it was mainly feed efficiency, but today we have to focus more on general behavior, of course on general livability, which has a very low heritability, so it's very tough for the geneticist to improve general livability. And what is now very important is nesting behavior. Chickens have to go to the nest box. If you run a small farm in Croatia with 5,000 or 10,000 hens, and 20% of the hens don't go to the nest box, then you have to collect every day 1,000 or 2,000 eggs from the floor. So you need every week either a new wife or a new husband or a new employee, because you get real problems with your back when you have to collect all those floor eggs, which was not a trade in the past. So today we have to change our selection priorities. And in general, when I started 27 years ago, we recorded data up to 1 year of egg production from 20 to 72 weeks of age, but now we are adding more segments, and we are still using a similar approach like in the dairy business, a multiple trait animal model, or you can run a random regression, it doesn't matter. So we have to add more traits, and the common target for all of us in the industry is to go for an extended cycle, and there is a side effect. If you keep your chickens longer, you need less replacement every year, so you have to kill less day-old male chicks, which is one of our major concerns. And I hope maybe in 3 or 5 years from now, I can offer you a solution where we can determine the sex in an incubated eggs after 3 or 5 days of incubation. But it will take another 2 or 3 years before we are able to do it. Now let's talk about the performance profile. And one of our challenges, and I took an example from the United States, there's one house, 400,000 birds under one roof, and there's another house with 10,000 cage-free birds. So people who are really convinced about cage production believe in cage-free they can never do as good as they do in cages. But here you have a clear effect. If you run a small, single age group, standalone farm, like you have in Canada in cages, or now also in US, or in Switzerland, or in Austria, they do outstanding. But if the farm is a big farm and you have close to 500,000 birds under one roof, which is a real challenge. So the environment has a big effect on the performance profile. Just a small example from a white layer I was in charge for several years of. We have recorded single performance from 21 weeks to 100 weeks of age. That's 80 weeks of production, more than 500 days. And what I would like to show to you is the birds can lay 500 eggs. So 56% or more than 50% of the hens has been laying so. And there is some hens, they lay more than 500 eggs. And the average rate of lay was 92% over the entire period. So, and I think the next slide is demonstrating it a little bit more. There's a nice distribution that the majority of the birds are laying more or less every day an egg, but nevertheless, from the same gene pool, you still have some lazy hens which work only 4 days a week or maybe 5 days a week and not 7 days a week. And here is a typical example, and I think this illustrates it a little bit more. If you are not in this industry, they start with 2 or 3 eggs, maybe 20 eggs, and they take 1 day or 2 days off. So the majority of the breaks the hens are doing is just for 1 day. On average, 75% of the breaks are just for 1 day. So in other words, this hen was laying 180 days, every day an egg. She took off 3 days here, another 100 days, 30 days, and so on. And there are some outstanding hens laying 200, 250 days, every day an egg. Okay, so no doubt about the performance profile. And this is a given fact. I was 2 weeks ago in Switzerland. For them, it's normal that they're depopulating a flock after 1 year of egg production, still laying 93, 94%. So performance is not an issue. But where are our issues now? One is feather packing and feather cover. Everybody assumes the hens are keeping their feathers till the end of the life, so I'm not a good candidate for this future. And if you run especially a free-range farm and consumers are visiting your location, they want to see full feathered hens. And as we know, like tail biting in pigs, it's a very complex trait or a complex behavior, and it's driven by a lot of factors. One is genetics, but it's stocking density, less bird, which is the common sense right now, is reducing the risk, but this is one of our biggest challenge. And on the other hand, we stopped doing big treatment. So if you ban beak trimming, you get more hens looking like this. And of course, as I mentioned before, you get an increased mortality, and you will need 5 gram feed per day more. That's round about 4% more. But there is no discussion. The discussion is over. All over Europe, very soon, will ban beak treatment. So what have we done in genetics? We started a project, my colleague Matthias Schmutz, several years ago, to measure the beak length. The upper beak is always a little bit longer than the lower beak. So what we tried to do, we tried to shorten the length of the upper beak and to make it more uniform. What I'm always saying is, we are shortening the weapon. So if you are aggressive and you have a blunt knife, it might be less damaging to the victim. That's my philosophy. But if you want to do so, you have to analyze, is this trait heritable? So do you get the good heritability? Can you shorten the beak? Yes, and it works. It's round about 10 to 20%. So there is a consistent genetic variation in all lines, so we are confident to reduce it. But now an issue with the poultry industry. When they read a message like this, they believe in 2 years from now it's solved. And after 3 years, they realize nothing is solved. Okay, the old stories of the geneticists, they promise a lot and they deliver nothing. The next, better bones. So what we are using, and there's plenty of ladies in the room, we are using the ultrasound device, and it's linked to osteoporosis, and in humans it works quite well. So we try to breed for stronger shells, because there is no doubt we need stronger shells, but at the same time better bones. And we are lucky that the ultrasound examination or human scoring is delivering nice heritability for the keel bone examination with ultrasound or with a scoring system. The assessment has a heritability of 20-30%, in the male line, in the female line 15%, ultrasound very similar. So we have 2 different phenotypes to be recorded, and right now it looks like that we might find some genetic information or genomic information which can be used to enhance or increase the process. We started this process, so it was exactly Dietmar Flock, more than 20 years ago with Scottish scientists. So now after 20 years, we are close, or no, we have started to apply the knowledge in the program with a reliable measurement. Because when I started, we kill the hens, or we put the hens under X-ray, or we kill the hen, and we measured the real bone strength by breaking the bone. What should I do if I know, Andrea, your bones are very strong, but I killed you before and now I want to breed with you? So it's a little bit tricky. So what are we doing to cope with this challenge? We are still testing our birds in North America on a conventional and also on enriched cages. There is no doubt with the cage system you get the most reliable data. And in Europe, we changed our system. Either we are testing the birds in a colony system which is fully equipped. It has sandbars, perch, nest box, and claw abrasive devices. And in addition, we equip all the hens with a transponder, and we put them in a trap nest system where we can record the number of saleable nest eggs. So families with a poor nesting acceptance are penalized. And the target is to breed vital or strong and docile layers. Another issue on the floor system, and it can happen, all of a sudden the hens are piling up like a pyramid. And the ones underneath, no comment. And they have to keep a strong feather cover strong bones, and what is most important, the performance-based feed consumption. Producers try to limit the amount of feed they're offering to chickens because 60 or 70% of the production costs are feed related. So this is just an overview about the system. The bird can go into the nest box. There's a tilt floor. The floor goes up a little bit. Then the door is locked because most of the time, two hens at the same time want to go into the nest box. If I have two hens in the nest box, if I get 2 eggs, my egg count is correct. If I have 2 hens, I get only 1 egg, the egg count is wrong. But if I soon have 2 hens, I cannot measure the egg quality because I cannot trace back the egg to the hen. Of course, I could do a DNA check and trace back. I pay €2 or €3 per egg, you name it, it's all possible, but the owner of the company has to pay it, and maybe I lose my job. So, selection goals must not be focused on current market or consumer needs alone, but rather on global market needs of the future. And this is what we have dealt all over the time in the poultry industry. And the focus is really longer cycles, still feed per saleable egg, less feed per egg, bird welfare and egg quality, and the key trait is really feather cover. And feather cover is really driving the business now in Europe, and I assume it will also happen in North America. More and more retailers are hiring auditors. They travel around and they score the flock on feather cover quality. And some have it already in the pipeline. If the feather cover is severe damaged, they will refuse to buy the eggs from those farms. Or you are forced to depopulate the farm, to bring the hens to the spent hen plant, and to replace it by a new flock. So we have to combine in our balanced selection production, quality, and livability traits. Genomic selection has enhanced genetic progress. It gives us a clear advantage in selecting males. As you know, we have no phenotypic data for egg performance on males. Each breeding company is setting its own priorities, though we have several groups in the poultry breeding industry, and every company has a wide range of different products and setting different selection priorities in order to prepare them ourselves or themselves to cover the market needs. And pure line response determines the rate of progress and finally the genetic characters of each bird. So we are still focusing mainly on pure line selection. All our data are supported with cross-line information, but I would postulate that all people in the poultry industry still rely mainly on pure line performance. So the best priorities in selection would be inefficient if pure lines do not respond. So you have to be lucky to have a good gene pool which is still responding. And the Leghorn gene pools we are covering is now a closed gene pool since more than 70 generations, and they are still responding quite well to our selection priorities. But nevertheless, you have seen we have reached a selection plateau because they are laying every day an egg. Genotype and management. So increasing performance level and the importance of behavioral characteristics demand a performance-related nutrient supply. And I really encourage all animal nutritionists to support us. I know it's challenging. It's mostly challenging in the organic sector, where we have a very limited range of raw materials available to feed our chickens. We know some of the flocks are under a permanent deficit, and every nutritionist can tell me how important sulfur or amino acids are when it comes to feather cover. So if the diet is not balanced, chickens will lose their feathers, but farmers will lose the opportunity to sell the eggs if the hens are poorly feathered. And what we have to do, we have to formulate our diets not just only on rate of lay, also on egg size, and it's very hard to transfer this message to the producer. It's egg mass per day where we have to focus on. And on the other hand, cage-free environments, which will be more important in the near future. It's already present, but for sure at 2030, the majority of the birds will in a cage-free environment. Then our tools for adjustments are very limited. So if nutrient supply doesn't cover daily needs, feather cover will suffer and mortality will increase, though they will blame us. We have been breeding chickens which cannot cope with the stress. And in the German-speaking society, a lot of politicians now asking for dual-purpose chickens. And I thought several days, should I include a table or not? And I decided not, because personally I believe in 2030 we will not have dual-purpose chickens. I just give you a rough overview. They lay only 20% less, which is 60 or 70 eggs less. The eggs are smaller, the color is not uniform, and the broiler needs 30 or 50% more feed to produce the same amount of meat. And I believe this is really not sustainable, but especially in Germany, when we discuss sex determination in the egg, all the politicians, regardless which party, they ask me, when are you ready to have a highly efficient dual-purpose chicken? And the reason why they're asking for is they believe if the performance level goes down, all the issues are solved. Feed efficiency or sustainability is for them too complicated to understand. Sorry to say this. So, open question, can genetics cover mistakes in nutrition and management? My conclusion is more robust chicken will perform less under good conditions, and we have a big range of excellent farmers as compared to chickens selected for maximum efficiency. So my answer is selection for a balanced profile with good efficiency and perfect behavioral characteristics has to be supported by good management. So we always have to act together. Genetics can support the project, but management and nutrition have to cover the needs. And if legislation is limiting our efforts, then we are really in troubles. So I believe the future of egg production is bright. Genomic selection has proven its advantage when combined with reliable phenotypic measurements. Like in other species, you need genomics and you need to measure all the phenotypic traits. As we know, you have to train your data set. You cannot do it once and live forever or enjoy the ride forever. So in the coming years, the prosperity of egg industry will be driven by genetic progress, but mainly by adjusted husbandry system, and animal welfare will play a major role. Eggs are cheap. Eggs are a highly nutritional food. They are accepted everywhere, but we have to look on livability and feather cover and bone strength, because there is a negative correlation between shell quality and bone strength, though we have to take this issue very serious. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very stimulating talk. We have time now for one or two questions. Are there any? You were focusing on the situation in Europe and North America. Obviously, it's not so different. What about Asia? What about South America?
When I'm traveling to Asia, they are very polite the first 1 or 2 hours, but after 2 hours, they are asking me, why are you wasting so much time with cage-free and dual purpose? Please focus on the real needs. I will fly next week to Japan. The Japanese are listening, and then they are asking, is it smart? Maybe, because they are extremely polite, But in all these areas in Asia and also in Africa, please keep on going, improving feed efficiency. Please give us more healthy food.
This was a clear message. Thank you very much. Mike. The mic was coming from there.
Rudy, you mentioned about the size of the eggs. I was just intrigued to know whether there's a kind of a optimum size of egg in relation to the consumer's requirements. And does that affect the kind of eggshell issue with the surface area to volume ratio of eggs of different sizes?
The bigger the egg, the thinner the shell. UK is an excellent example. I know the guy who is behind Big and Fresh. There's now a big campaign in UK, buy Big and Fresh. Now all of a sudden the eggs in UK have to be bigger because there is a big promotional behind. And they do not accept that the shell strength will go down. So there is no optimum egg weight. I'm always using the example, in Israel, an egg has to have more than 70 grams. In India, an egg is great with 50 grams. Mexico is in between, even Italy or Germany. The northern part, smaller eggs, the southern part, larger eggs. There is a big variation within a country. And then there is preferential for shell color. I'm also using Iraq and Iran. Iraq is brown, Iran is white. Most Asian countries are brown. In the Philippines, an egg has to be white, and in India, an egg has to be white. Don't ask me why. We supply both, small, medium, and large, white and brown, that's the only way.